news came out that did seem to shock the world, conservative and liberals in some sense. I was getting text messages from random people I didn't even know that were political saying, can you believe this? Lori Lightfoot, the really a known entity, a known name as the mayor of Chicago. Now, Chicago has not had the best press in the last few years. Essentially was unseated in what was, it's not a primary system, but in a similar situation here.
The way that the Chicago mayoral election works is that it is a lot of candidates at the beginning, and it's technically a nonpartisan race. So it's not like a primary for Republicans versus a primary for the Democrats, and then you have some independents sprinkled in. What you have here is a long list of candidates, and they technically don't have any sort of indication by their name of what party they're for, but their policies.
And I think the main focus coming out of this is that a very known, very liberal figure, and a controversial figure, mainly due to the fact that they've had a lot of problems with their education systems there. And obviously they've had a ton of problems with crime. Chicago, one of the greatest cities in America, has become one of those places like San Francisco, which you now kind of talk about in a sort of hush-hush, oh, it used to be great kind of point of view. And at least unlike California, you have people in Chicago acknowledging it, seeing it, and trying to do something about it.
This was the first incumbent mayor, Chicago mayor, first incumbent Chicago mayor to lose re-election since 1983. So that's 40 years.
So in 40 years,
this has happened.
Which is wild to think about too, because it also shows you sort of how complacent people get with a name they know. Chicago has not been known for this kind of, controversial flip of a seat, or if you will. This has not been known in Chicago. That doesn't happen that much. We've seen some pretty corrupt people in Chicago stay in office for a long time.
So Lori Lightfoot, she came into office in 2019. And since then, she was the mayor under the pandemic. There was a huge spike in crime. So much so that there were, in 2021, the highest number of killings in more than 25 years occurred, with 797. And then more than 3,500 shootings, which was 1,400 more shootings. So close to double, about 40% more.
Chicago already known as a pretty dangerous city for gun violence, maybe the most. And you're talking about coming in and nearly doubling it.
And when she first took office.
Right.
So the crime was out of control.
It was already bad.
There was a lot of unrest during that time. There was the lockdowns. She had a lot of issues with the schooling in Chicago because the teachers union is very powerful in Chicago. And so all this built to where she became the first incumbent mayor to not she will not be reelected because she is now off the ballot.
She's done.
She could have won reelection last night if she got 50% of the vote, or any of the candidates got 50% of the vote. It doesn't go to a second ballot. But what we're now looking at is an April 4th runoff between the two that became the second tier.
It's an odd way to put it, just because the way it's run.
Paul Vallis, who is a former Chicago Public Schools CEO, and also the Cook County Commissioner, Brandon Johnson. They'll advance on to the next phase, which is in April.
Yeah. When a poll came out of ranking the issues that made the decision for Chicago voters, 44% of those voters said they voted specifically for crime and public safety as the most important thing. Very low behind that, only 13% was criminal justice reform, and then the economy and jobs at 12%.
It's a pushback on the entire defund police movement that we saw for so many years, and issues that have arisen out of that, where the cities, coupled with the pandemic, with unrest, and also the left's push to defund police and not focus on creating safety in the cities. You're seeing great cities like New York, like LA, like San Francisco, like Chicago, places that were cultural centers of America, places where in modern times had a level of safety unprecedented, where you could go to the city with your family and not be concerned. It wasn't the fear city of the 70s like in New York, where you're always concerned about your safety walking out on the street. And now we're going back to an era that a lot of things seem very Jimmy Carter era, where we're looking at not having the safety that people kind of took for granted for so long.